There is nothing. Only warm primordial blackness. Your conscious ferments in it. No larger than a single grain of malt. You don't have to do anything anymore. Ever. Never, ever. Never, ever, ever, baby. An inordinate amount of time passes. It is utterly void of struggle. No ex-wives are contained within it. You got it, sweet brother. Nothing upon nothing upon nothing. Coming right up, sir. Smooth passage. Do you really? Alright, nothing town to fuck all borough. Not you. Your days of giving a shit and being that type of animal are over. Do you really?
You wouldn't like it if I told you what was back there. Why'd you think you had to bludgeon yourself into oblivion? Or did you not sense yourself marinating? Poured so much on yourself, got a bit carried away, did we, Chef?
Fear and apprehension. You should ask what's out there first.
Yes, your one disco mother. There's this giant ball there. And evil apes. And evil apes are juking it out on the ball. You're one of them. It's basically all just evil apes juking it out on a giant ball. You can't even make out it's a ball when you're joking it out. It's that large. Infinitesimally small. Vying for resources is just a stupid expression you picked up somewhere. The part of the presentation you want to take home with you is this. You have to beat the other evil apes in the face, or you lose. Yes, it is. And you drowned in that sadness a long time ago. You lost.
My friends and I often discuss transformative media, that is, media that takes the art from which it belongs to a new level of success or achievement. Transformative media can belong to any art form, like books, comic books, movies, television, or video games, and can exist on a macro or personal level. For a more contemporary example, 2019's Parasite was the first non-English language film to win Best Picture at the Oscars, and has set the precedent for filmmakers from all over the world that they can achieve critical and commercial success in the United States. Bong Joon-ho managed to make a film that is intrinsically South Korean while also diving into themes of wealth disparity that people all over the world can relate to. Without Parasite, today's sensations like Squid Game may not have achieved the mainstream success it has, and it makes me hopeful for years to come that more movies and shows from all over the world can confidently enter the seemingly bottomless pit that is the US entertainment market and find success. So what does all this have to do with a video game? Well, I have to say that Disco Elysium is special, so much so that I believe it can cross over to a type of consumer who loves to read but isn't all into video games. The draw to Disco Elysium isn't its stellar button-mashing gameplay, but its writing, of which I can honestly say is some of the best character, dialogue, world building, and thematic work I've ever had the privilege to experience. After a 9-ish months on BookTube, the audience I've attracted to this channel seems to consist of people who love classic literature, that is, books that not only challenge the norms of the society during which they are written in, but also challenge readers today to think more deeply about themselves and our contemporary society. In many ways, I believe Disco Elysium fits this mold. After all, reading is the gameplay. To set the scene, you play as an amnesiac cop, waking up in a rented room in the whirling rag. Although you literally cannot remember anything about yourself, or where you are, or why you're here, it is quite clear that you went on an extreme bender the night before, and clues around the apartment, like your necktie hanging from the ceiling fan, suggest far more sinister acts were tempted. You learn quickly that you're in a motel in Martinez, a district of a larger city called Revachol, ruined by wars between monarchs, communists, and fascists, to the point where it's now nothing more than a collection of rundown ghettos, and that its greatest use now is a storage area for corporate cargo. You are confronted immediately by a man named Kim Kitsuragi, who reveals himself to be a detective from another precinct and your new partner for a potential murder case that brought you to Martinez in the first place, but you have no memory of it. Together, you are both members of the RCM, militiamen, and agents of the Coalition, a liberal government who swept into Revachol after the Communist Revolution, and now have a shaky rule over the city. The detective you play as, whose name you later learn is Harry Dubois, is complex, and perhaps irreversibly damaged by events you know nothing about. But his mysterious amnesia puts the two of you in the same shoes as you both exit the motel and explore this physically and morally decrepit city for the first time. I have to first compliment the tone of the game. Martinez and its people are depressing, but the writers manage to find humor in the sadness without downplaying any of the tragedy. It's absurd that you play as an amnesia cop, and the characters around you don't hold back in addressing this absurdity. In fact, Kim's tolerance of you suggests that the RCM must be on an incredibly low supply of employees, or even lower concern, in order to justify an officer in your mental state on the field. However, this amnesia allows you to play this character how you want to, without downplaying any of his past or turning him into a generic badass with a heart of gold that plagues most video game protagonists. Harry is an alcoholic, drug addict, and suicidal man, but it's up to you to determine if and how he evolves as a character. For me personally, my Harry never touched drugs or alcohol during my entire playthrough, but the city of Revachol is in no shortage of these vices, and the temporary health and stats boosts they give you make them admittedly very tempting to try out. Although a lot of your past remains a mystery, you can somewhat connect the dots of the character Harry once was and the character you want him to be through his inner monologue, represented by 32 aspects of his brain. These characters mostly speak to Harry during conversations and can either help or hinder him based on which aspects the player wants to listen to. The voice actor who handles both the narration and all the aspects of Harry's mind is phenomenal, and the incredible range of his talent cannot be fully appreciated until you actually play the game all the way through.
The woman gazes steadily at the waves. A sudden gust picks up her dark hair and lets it fall again, tousled, wild. She brushes a few stray locks from her eyes, and only then spots you approaching.
Aye, so here you are. It's late and the sun is going down. It'll be dark soon. If we stay here long enough, we will be joined by a cortege of drunks and teenagers. Know that you're not the first guy to bring a girl to Land's End. This is what the locals call a make-out spot. That is not going to happen here today. I just want to make that clear, Dimples.
Her thoughts are still elsewhere, with distances across the water, and with the water itself.
Drinking men aren't known for keeping their appointments. Aye, you're the starriest of them all.
As she turns to face the sun, reflected in the waves and the skyscrapers rising across the bay, you cannot help following her steady gaze. The remains of the dying sun are reflected in the waves and the skyscrapers rising across the bay. Your mind clears for a moment as your senses take it all in. Not just the glass skyscrapers, fragile looking in the shimmering air. River Esperance flowing into the bay.
Isn't it strange for this all-powerful thing, the sun, to be so generous towards us? You know, the best time to go out fishing is usually towards sunset, when the water is warmer.
The sun also falls on the Capeside tenements and war-torn ruins. An old sea fortress juts out, seemingly impervious to the sheen cast over everything else, shaking you out of your reverie. The sun does little for the dead, and those hopelessly lost in their own minds.
Oh, that was a bit of pride and a bit of superstition.
There's salt in the air, and the cries of the gulls and the skuas, grit of the sand and the green glint of broken bottles. But still your gaze always returns to the dazzling streaks of light, wherever they may be reflected, their fading opulence.
It's bringing us spring, summer. It's entirely on our side, no matter what we do or who we are, for absolutely no reason. It's unlike no other powerful being, certainly no powerful organization or government. How can that be? I guess we wouldn't really be here if that thing wasn't on our team.
Maybe some general remarks before you say something big. Work your way up to the cool.
I think what truly makes Disco Elysium special are the characters and the world building and how they seamlessly blend with the plot and themes of the story. The artwork, done by Alexander Rostov, is incredible, as he finds an interesting balance between the grays and muted colors one would expect from a noir detective piece, while also injecting life into the world with warm reds, oranges, and blues that keep things visually distinct and, above all, alive. From setting to character design, everything you see in Disco Elysium makes a strong first impression, and as a detective new to this world, you will often have to rely on these impressions when calculating the risks of a murky situation. And with that, I must talk about the supporting characters in the district of Martinez. This is perhaps the supreme example of Disco Elysium's transcendent writing. Martinez feels at its most three-dimensional when focusing on its characters, as every single one of them has a backstory, has their own personal goals of varying scale, and all have the potential to be playing the amnesia cop new to town. This is also where the game's themes are at their most prominent because, at its core, Disco Elysium is all about politics. From ultra-liberals trying to maintain the status quo so long as they're on top, to insane fascists preaching their own absurd eugenics theories, to hardened union workers who serve as a stronger police force than the actual police, and finally to the union leaders, who are so blinded by their own communist propaganda that they too may not realize their own sinister, self-serving intentions. Martinez has a literal buffet of political ideologies, and you too can play a role in its development. In Disco Elysium, every political ambition requires breaking a few eggs, and the discourse the game offers on every political faction and how you react to it pulls no punches in its blunt and brutal honesty.
Success. That's such a relief. Titus can be a handful sometimes. Now, what can Everard Clare do for you today? The Golden Boy returns once more. Wonderful. Simply wonderful, Harry. Of course. I already knew this. My friend, the mailman, confirms the letter is on its way. You've done a great thing today. You've given the children of Martinez a future and proven to be a true man of the left. I can finally trust you now. You're in my inner circle. You too, Mr. Kitsuragi. We can talk about anything. The strike, the murder, your lost gun, nothing is off the table.
Oh, Bratan, you play the old man like a three-string banjo. He has no idea.
Harry, by now you should know I would never do anything tricky like that. However, if the construction noise and limited street access makes some people consider moving, well, let's just say there'll be freshly renovated buildings near the roundabout where those poor people can finally enjoy a significant uptick in quality of life. I'm talking real affordable workers' palaces. Oh, you mean what sort of goods are going to be flowing through? How am I going to replace all the contacts we'll lose once the poo-poo hits the fan? The clients will ditch us. Harry, we've thought of everything. We've been running back channel negotiations with all the major clients. I think the company will be unpleasantly surprised to see how many of them stay loyal to Martinez and to the new competitive contracts we can offer. With renewed zeal sparked by communal ownership, the men will be shipping those containers double time. You'll be surprised to see how fast things go without parasites latching on. We'll have our hands free to pursue bold, exotic new revenue streams.
That's drugs.
Drug trafficking.
Drug trafficking? Don't be stupid, Mr. Kitsuragi. There are perfectly legal, 100% ethical chemical factories on the Samaran Isola. You don't need to be colonialist about it. All they do is produce components to keep the pharmaceutical industry running. That's people's health we're talking about. Old grannies, little babes, people with disabilities.
Wow. A neurochemical. Psychoactive labor uprising stroke hostile takeover.
The company thinks transporting these chemicals in bulk looks bad, has bad optics, may be illegal in some countries. The Debarders Union, however, we're all about the large volume column. We're gonna transport the living daylights out of those materials, Harry. So your sick kid can get his benefit and your wacky uncle doesn't have to come off risperidone.
And the kids on the street can get speed and pyrrolidone.
I'm an old-fashioned guy, Mr. Kitsuragi. I sometimes grab a beer with the boys, but I have no idea about the things you just mentioned. But if I were to supply ingredients for some sort of rainbow party, I would make sure the Union took a fantastic share. And I'd keep that stuff far away from Martinez.
You are, however, just one man, and your overall impact on Martinez is befittingly small and nebulous. You can have great influences on singular people, but when it comes to the grand political scheme, there are forces much more powerful than you. Despite your influence being somewhat small in the grand political spectrum, your ability to solve the murder case of a hanged militiaman probably has the most immediate impact on the current state of Martinez, as its political factions were already at each other's throats before the murder, and that animosity is only heightened in its wake. I'm sort of sick of cinematic games, not so much with the games themselves, but with the discussion around them. Games like Red Dead 2 and God of War, because of the sheer nature of looking cinematic and having quote-unquote themes, as bare bones and contradictory as they may be, having gaming journalists and YouTubers praising them to high heaven because they look like mature movies. Well, Disco Elysium doesn't have the film gloss, but its writing is still on par with some of the best movies I've ever seen. There isn't this forced, dour drama over all the narrative to disguise as one-dimensional characters and meandering plot because the writers have confidence in their craft. It's almost a middle finger to games like God of War for trying to take a generic father-son narrative with such pretentious and unearned gravitas, while Disco Elysium tackles issues that are actually complex and actually morbid, but still, at times, isn't afraid to laugh at itself and address dire situations with a touch of flippancy. But at the same time, the narrative can be serious when it has to be, and some of the dramatic set pieces here had me on the edge of my seat like no other game before it. You know you're attached to a video game when the sheer presence of a gun is enough to fill you with dread, especially in the wake of most AAA games that treat guns and killing and the player's own danger so dispassionately. There are tremendous stakes in Disco Elysium, despite the fact that the player himself is only in real danger a handful of times, and I think other video game writers should take this into account more often when coming up with action set pieces.
Put your hands where I can see them. Show me your hands. This is the pigs. Show me your hands. Right now!
Scavenged, battery-powered police lights protrude from her back. The flickering light show reveals the gun in her shaking hand.
Madame, please drop the firearm immediately.
You shouldn't be here. Something's very wrong with her. She's completely out of control.
The man appears to be pulling out an object from his pocket. Fear the threat! Fear the threat! Superseding event. Split-second decision. Get on the ground. Get on the goddamn ground! Subject yourself to a full body cavity search. Prohibited materials concealed in nostrils, ears, mouth, navel, urethra, foreskin, vagina, and rectum.
In her mind, the cavity search is happening, as long as she's saying it. It appears the things she says are very real to her.
Be careful, detective. Don't do anything that might set her off.
The situation looks bad. Calm yourself. Steady your breathing.
If you couldn't tell by now, I really think Disco Elysium is special. So special, in fact, that I truly believe if non-gamers gave it a chance, they would actually like it, if not love it. Disco Elysium represents an actual step in video game narratives being taken more seriously as an art form. There is no brooding badass main character who has to dramatically contemplate all the bad things he's done before murdering hundreds of NPCs before the next cutscene, or sleeving cinematography that, compared to the best cinematography in films, doesn't really compare at all. But what Disco Elysium does have is heart and confidence in the player to enjoy the game in whatever way he or she chooses. I love Disco Elysium, and it has made me a permanent fan of the team behind it.